what I found is that kind of balance that we're going for is really a myth. It's not about balancing as much as it is finding the rhythm that works for you and following that. Balance with this even distribution between your time, your energy, your attention, especially as a mother and an HSP. And also if you're working, it's just not possible to have everything running in this perfect state of balance. Life isn't static. Things happen, things come up, and we can't be so rigid. We have to sort of flow with what's happening. Welcome to the High Sensory Mothers podcast, a space for intuitive mothers who experience the world deeply. You might know this as high sensitivity, being an HSP, or my preferred term, high sensory intelligence. I'm your host, Karen Hunt. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome to the High Sensory Mothers podcast. I'm your host, Karen Hunt, and today we are going to dive into the myth of balance. So, I used to think that if I could just figure out what the right routine is, get this perfect balance, then everything would run smoothly and everything would be perfect. But it never really lasted, not for very long. Just trying to do everything just right and perfectly is a recipe for disappointment and for exhaustion and burnout. What I found is that kind of balance that we're going for is really a myth. It's not about balancing as much as it is finding the rhythm that works for you and following that. Balance with this even distribution between your time, your energy, your attention, especially as a mother and an HSP. And also if you're working, it's just not possible to have everything running in this perfect state of balance. Life isn't static. Things happen, things come up, and we can't be so rigid. We have to sort of flow with what's happening. And this pressure that we're under to hold everything together is just not sustainable. And it leads to us feeling not enough, not good enough, especially when we can compare ourselves with others' polished views of their life. We don't come off too favourably then, do we? So, we just feel this pressure. We have this idea in our minds that we should be able to perfectly balance things. We compare unfavourably with others and we feel that we're just falling behind. And again, it underscores this feeling that we've probably grown up with, believing that there's something wrong with us. And I really don't think that's the case at all. I feel that our modern life has so many demands upon us and we're trying to be so good at so many different areas of life. It's just impossible to juggle all these things and give everything this equal weighting, really. So what I would like to talk about more is this idea of rhythm. The ebb and flow I've talked about before, particularly in nature. Again, it's really useful to think about nature, think about water, bodies of water like the sea, and, watching that flow, that back and forth, watching the seasons, seeing how a tree grows fruit, but you don't see that fruit for many months of the year because the tree is gaining its nutrients and it's sustaining itself during that winter period, ready for growth in spring. And then in summer and autumn, the fruits, blossom really. So I think if we can use rhythm as an anchor for us, it's far more useful for us and far more possible for us to find this rhythm within ourselves. And I think it takes some pressure off, and it does help us do all the different things. But it's more like embracing the breath, the in and the out, the flow when we go with that rhythm, rather than, trying to literally balance all these different things. Some days or some weeks you might be in one flow, you might be having this creative spark, and that's the emphasis, that's where you work. Another time you might be just needing to rest and recuperate, just like a tree in the winter, and it doesn't mean that you're, again, not being productive. We've been talking about this quite a lot on the podcast about this sense of productivity. Rest is productive because it's getting you ready for that next stage of growth. So you need to follow this rhythm of the peaks and the troughs, really. And when you do that in all areas of your life, in your work, in your parenting, for example, some days might be really hard and you might have to bring so much conscious effort and attention to your children and to the way that you're navigating parenting. Perhaps your children are going through a growth spurt, or that they're entering a new phase, and suddenly all the ways that you've been interacting before need to be refined and looked at because they're not working the way they used to. And so it's calling on you to focus more on that, and other things will have to wait. And, you might have some time where your children are just really happily, joyfully playing together and they're really engaged. And this gives you this space, this freedom to flow in a different direction. So, life isn't static. And even though we have a culture which is very time driven and it's very task orientated, real life isn't actually like that. We can be guided by this kind of structure or this framework, but we need to have the grace really to move with what needs to be in a flow state. And I think when we use the word rhythm rather than balance, that can help us navigate this tricky area. So for me, what I found is there are times when my energy is low. I need to rest, reflect, recuperate. And so I have to say no to a lot of things. And that's okay, because then there are other times where I have this higher level of energy and I can use that to create these podcast episodes, for example. There are some days, some weeks when I just don't have it in me, and other times when I can do them all day long. And that's just the rhythm that I can flow with. So I think perfectionism is a real issue when it comes to rhythm. It's more important to do what's important than to do everything perfectly. And this is particularly important for us because we care so much and we want to do a really good job. It can be quite hard to do things to a standard that is good but not great. And I totally understand that. But again, it's more about flowing. And there's also this acceptance, I think, that we need to have, that we don't have to be perfect at something. And that actually this journey that we're on is one of learning and growth. Therefore, we have to start off doing things badly in order to get better at them. And that's okay. We can be where we're at, and that's okay too. And we can still look to improve constantly. And I feel like that is a great way to help us get into flow and to develop that rhythm of constant iteration and improvement. The other thing I wanted to mention is honoring our need to have some space just so that we can process things, particularly when it comes to our emotions. Often I think so much can happen, so much can go on, and we have lots of feelings that come up. And do we give ourselves enough opportunity and enough time to allow ourselves the grace, the space to feel what's coming up and to process them and to let them go in whichever way is necessary and needed for that? Sometimes there are things that come up and we just need to acknowledge them and notice them for our own benefit. Other times there are things we need to process and then do something about. It might be a conversation that we need to have with a family member, or it could be a situation at work that needs to be dealt with. But if we don't give ourselves that space to process, then I feel that it can start getting stuck within us. And as you know, our bodies hold on to emotions and they hold on to experiences. So part of the rhythm needs to be giving ourselves that gift of time to be able to process. And obviously there are different ways that we can process things, and you may find ways that work for you already, or it might be a skill that you want to develop. So it could be that you're processing through walking, for example, or talking or writing. There are so many different ways, and that's something that can be for another time. So the point is, I would like you to reflect on this. Do you give yourself the opportunity to process what comes up for you? Or are you in this state of trying to balance all the different things rather than accepting the rhythm of different things and allowing yourself time to navigate in that way? We as HSPs, highly sensitive people, or high sensory people, we tend to process more than other people, and we take in more information and notice more information, and therefore we have to process more. And when we don't process more, we tend to shut down in some capacity. We might get sick, we might develop a headache or something physical, so that we're kind of getting to the point where our body is shouting to us. It needs time to process. And so getting into the rhythm of allowing yourself ample time and opportunity to process before your body is shouting at you is such a useful thing to do. I'm often talking about the long term. And when we notice these things and do something about it before it becomes a problem, it's like in a fire, you see the first few sparks, and that's when you deal with a fire, not wait until it's raging and there's smoke everywhere and there's flames everywhere. If you can deal with it while it's still small, it's not going to cause you and your health such issues as it will do if you ignore it and just try and get on with all the different things. So developing this healthy rhythm which allows for processing time gives you that ability to recalibrate. And that is such an important thing, because you will then make better choices, your energy will be in a better state, and you will actually manage to achieve more things in the traditional sense of, ticking off those tasks. And when you embrace sort of the rhythm that you have, that will also help you not be rigid. And being really rigid and static is anti-life. It goes against nature. So it's not a healthy way to live, and you won't be able to do it for very long. The rhythmic way of living your life invites this responsiveness rather than this resistance that can come up in your life. So when you move with nature and when you move with your nature, it's like life feels less like a fight and more like a dance. So I invite you to consider your week ahead, and where can you really invite this idea of a rhythm into your life? Rather than following a set of rules, can you invite rhythm? And I'd just like to sort of leave you with this final thought that you really don't have to do it all. What you need to do is to just move in time with yourself, find your own rhythm and live your life and lead your life from that place. So I hope this was a useful episode for you today. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to reach out, please do. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now. Thanks for being here with me today. If something in this episode resonated, trust it. This podcast is part of the High Sensory Mothers body of work for sensitive women who've carried too much and are ready to come home to themselves and what truly matters. You can find out more at highsensorymothers.com. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.